Alien SOS, First Contact. The comm array at Cheyenne Mountain picked up the signal at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning that would forever change humanity's place in the universe. Senior Communications Officer Sarah Chen was halfway through her third cup of coffee when the encrypted channels suddenly erupted with an impossible transmission. "Ma'am, we're getting something on the Deep Space Monitoring Array," called out Technician Rodriguez, his voice tight with confusion. "It's not from any of our satellites or the ISS." Sarah hurried over to his station, her coffee forgotten. The waveform dancing across his screen was unlike anything in their databases. The signal was clearly artificial, structured, and repeating in mathematical sequences that spoke of intelligence. But more unsettling was the unmistakable tone of desperation underlying the transmission. "Run it through the translation protocols," she ordered, though she knew their systems were designed for human languages, not whatever this was. Within minutes, the AI-assisted translation began producing fragments. Words like help, dying, sanctuary, and pursuers emerged from the alien syntax. The message was a distress call, broadcast on frequencies that suggested the senders understood basic physics, but came from technology far more advanced than Earth's. General Marcus Webb arrived within the hour, his weathered face grim as he studied the translated fragments. "How long has this been broadcasting?" "Based on signal degradation, approximately 6 hours, Chen reported. "Sir, there's something else. The signal is getting stronger. Whatever sent this is getting closer to Earth." The next few hours blurred together in a whirlwind of emergency protocols. The president was awakened, the UN Security Council called into emergency session, and every major observatory on the planet turned toward the signal's source. What they found changed everything. A ship materialized on their long-range sensors, massive and clearly artificial, limping toward Earth's solar system. Its design was elegant yet foreign, with curved hull sections that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. But damage was evident across its surface, with entire sections dark and debris trailing in its wake. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the SETI program, worked frantically to establish better communication. Her team had managed to create a basic translation matrix, enough to understand the dire situation unfolding in space above them. The aliens called themselves the Cathara, refugees from a distant star system. Their homeworld had been attacked without warning by a ruthless species known as the Devourers, beings who consumed entire civilizations for their resources. The ship contained the last survivors of their race, perhaps 3,000 souls fleeing across the galaxy in search of sanctuary. "They're asking for permission to enter our system," Dr. Vasquez reported to the assembled world leaders via secure video conference. "Their ship is failing. Life support is critical. They have maybe days before total system failure." The debates that followed were heated. Some nations wanted to offer immediate assistance. Others feared invasion or contamination. But as more details emerged about the Devourers, a chilling picture formed. The Cathara weren't just refugees. They were harbingers of something far worse coming behind them. "The Devourers track fleeing ships," came one translated message. "They follow refugees to find new worlds to consume. We tried to lose them in the void, but they are relentless. We fear we may have led them to your world. We are sorry." Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Enterprise, humanity's most advanced spaceship, received orders to make contact. The Enterprise was actually a converted aircraft carrier launched into space during humanity's recent push to establish lunar mining operations. It wasn't designed for first contact, but it was the largest armed vessel humanity had in orbit. As Morrison's ship approached the alien vessel, the true scale of the refugee ship became apparent. It dwarfed the Enterprise, stretching nearly 2 kilometers in length, but up close, the damage was heartbreaking. Entire sections were venting atmosphere, and the ship's once beautiful hull was scarred by weapon impacts that had melted through alien alloys like butter. The first face-to-face meeting between humans and aliens took place in the Enterprise's cargo bay. The Kythera who came aboard were tall, graceful beings with elongated limbs and faces that seemed almost human, despite their pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes. Their leader, who gave her name as something that translated to Melody of Distant Stars, carried herself with dignity despite her people's desperate circumstances. Through improved translation protocols, Melody explained the horror that had befallen her people. The Devourers had appeared without warning, massive black ships that blocked out their sun. No attempt at communication was made. The attack began immediately with weapons that turned entire cities to glass and stripped the atmosphere from planets. "We were not warriors," Melody explained, her alien voice carrying emotions that transcended species barriers. "We were artists, scientists, philosophers. We believed the universe was vast enough for all thinking beings to coexist in peace. We were wrong." The refugee ship carried the last remnants of Kytheran culture, their art, their science, their children, and their elderly. They had fled across half the galaxy, but the Devourers had followed. Every time the Kythera thought they had escaped, the black ships would appear again, forcing them to run once more. "Why did you come here?" Morrison asked gently. "Your radio signals," Melody replied. "We detected them decades ago as we fled. Music, stories, mathematics. You broadcast your thoughts to the stars without fear. We hoped that meant you were strong enough to defend them." As the Enterprise crew worked with Kytheran engineers to stabilize the refugee ship, humanity faced its greatest decision. The aliens' arrival would inevitably draw the Devourers to Earth. Some argued for turning the refugees away, forcing them to continue their journey and hopefully leading their pursuers elsewhere. Others insisted that helping the Kythera was not just morally right, but potentially humanity's only chance of survival. The decision came from an unexpected source, a 12-year-old girl from Kansas, whose essay was read aloud at the UN emergency session, captured the moment perfectly. "If we turn away people who need help just because helping them might be dangerous, then we're already the kind of people who don't deserve to be saved." Earth opened its arms to the Kythera, offering them sanctuary on Luna and in the asteroid belt. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists, sharing technology and knowledge. The Kythera's advanced power systems and materials science combined with human ingenuity and manufacturing capability to begin upgrading Earth's defenses. But even as the first Kytheran children looked up at Earth from their new homes on Luna, long-range sensors detected the first signs of the pursuit. Dark shapes moving between the stars, following the refugee ship's ion trail like bloodhounds. The Devourers had found humanity's solar system. Admiral Chen, now promoted to head Earth's hastily assembled defense force, stood in the command center of Olympus Station, humanity's new orbital defense platform. Around her, human and Kytheran officers worked side by side, their two species united by necessity and growing friendship. "How long do we have?" she asked. The answer came from both species' best scientists working together. 6 months, maybe 7? Then they'll be here." Melody of Distant Stars, now serving as liaison between the species, placed a graceful hand on the Admiral's shoulder. "We are sorry for bringing this to your world, but perhaps together we can succeed where my people failed alone." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. 6 months to prepare for an enemy that had destroyed entire star systems. 6 months to turn humanity from a single-planet species into something capable of fighting beings who had conquered half the galaxy. The message went out across every human communication network on Earth and throughout the growing colonies. Humanity had made its choice. They would stand with the Kythera, they would fight the Devourers, and they would win or die as free beings rather than live as slaves or cattle. The human industrial machine, the same force that had built pyramids, carved through continents with canals, and put cities in orbit, turned toward war. Every shipyard, every factory, every 3D printer from Earth to the belt began producing weapons, ships, and defensive systems. Humanity had been peaceful by choice, not by nature, and now that choice was being taken away. Earth's awakening. The preparation. The next 6 months transformed humanity in ways that would have seemed impossible just a year before. What began as a desperate scramble to prepare for invasion evolved into something far more profound, the awakening of humanity's true potential as a species. Dr. James Harrison, a former MIT professor, now heading the joint Human-Kithaeron Technology Initiative, stood in what had once been a car manufacturing plant in Detroit. Now, the facility stretched for kilometers underground, its assembly lines producing spacecraft at a rate that amazed even the Kithaerans. Where once automobiles had rolled off the line, now sleek fighters and massive defensive platforms emerged every few hours. "Your species has a gift," Melody of Distant Stars observed, watching as human workers collaborated with Kithaeron engineers to install alien power cores into human-designed hulls. "We took millennia to develop our technology. You have improved upon our designs in mere months." Harrison nodded grimly. "Necessity is a hell of a motivator. When the alternative is extinction, humans can do miraculous things." The fusion of human ingenuity with Kithaeron technology had produced unexpected breakthroughs. Human engineers, unbound by thousands of years of alien tradition, approached problems from angles the Kithaerans had never considered. Meanwhile, Kithaeron science provided the theoretical foundation for advances that would have taken humanity centuries to achieve alone. The most revolutionary development came from an unlikely collaboration between Dr. Sarah Kim, a quantum physicist from Seoul, and a young Kithaeron named Harmony of Equations. Working together, they had cracked the secret of faster-than-light communication, something even the Kithaerans had never achieved. "The Devourers coordinate their fleets through quantum entanglement networks," Harmony explained to the assembled War Council. "If we can disrupt those networks, their advantages in numbers become meaningless." Admiral Chen studied the technical readouts with growing excitement. "You're talking about turning their greatest strength into a weakness." "Exactly," Dr. Kim interjected. "But it requires precise timing and coordination across multiple star systems. We'll need to build a network of quantum disruptors and activate them simultaneously." The plan was ambitious beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. Construction began immediately on massive installations throughout the solar system. On Mars, automated factories worked around the clock to produce quantum disruptor arrays. In the asteroid belt, mining operations extracted rare elements needed for the weapons systems. Even Venus's hellish surface was terraformed in select locations to house defensive installations. But technology alone wouldn't win this war. Admiral Chen knew they needed strategy, tactics, and above all, they needed to understand their enemy better than the Devourers understood themselves. Captain Morrison, now commanding the newly constructed flagship UES Defiance, led scouting missions to the edge of the solar system. What they found there confirmed their worst fears and sparked their greatest inspiration. "The probe data is conclusive," Morrison reported to the War Council. "The Devourers aren't just following the Kithaeron refugees. They're conducting advanced reconnaissance of our entire system. They know we're here, and they're planning accordingly." The alien fleet approaching Earth was vast beyond comprehension. Hundreds of massive ships, each one capable of sterilizing a planet. But the scout missions revealed something else. The Devourers had grown complacent over millennia of easy victories. Their tactics were predictable, their formations standard, their technology advanced but stagnant. "They've never faced real resistance," observed Colonel Elena Rodriguez, now heading Earth's Special Forces training program. "Every species they've encountered has either fled or been overwhelmed quickly." They don't know how to fight a prepared enemy. This insight sparked a complete revolution in human military thinking. Instead of trying to match the Devourers ship for ship, humanity would fight asymmetrically. Speed, flexibility, and unpredictability would be their weapons against overwhelming force. Training facilities across Earth and the colonies worked continuously to prepare a new kind of military force. Human pilots learned to fly ships that responded to thought as much as touch, their reflexes enhanced by Kitharan neural interfaces. Ground forces trained with weapons that could cut through alien armor like paper, while engineers learned to repair and modify technology in the field. The Kitharans, meanwhile, were learning something they had never known: how to fight back. Their peaceful nature had made them vulnerable to the Devourer's initial assault, but human instructors taught them that survival sometimes required violence. "Your people have shown us something we thought impossible," Melody told Admiral Chen during one of their planning sessions. "How to be warriors without losing our souls." The transformation wasn't just military. Across human civilization, people were changing in fundamental ways. The knowledge that they were no longer alone in the universe, combined with the imminent threat of extinction, had unified the species like never before. Old conflicts seemed petty in the face of cosmic war. Resources were shared freely between nations. Scientists collaborated across borders without concern for patents or prestige, and ordinary people volunteered for dangerous assignments without hesitation. Maria Santos, a schoolteacher from Brazil, found herself training to operate defensive satellites. "My children ask me why I'm leaving to fight in space," she said, during an interview that was broadcast across Earth. "I tell them I'm not leaving to fight. I'm leaving to make sure they have a future to grow up in." The industrial mobilization was unlike anything in human history. Every resource, every innovation, every person contributed to the war effort. Teenagers who had been playing video games months before now piloted drone fighters through asteroid fields. Grandmothers who had never left their home countries worked in orbital factories, assembling weapons that would determine humanity's fate. The Kitharans watched this transformation with wonder and growing hope. Their own response to the Devourer threat had been flight, a desperate attempt to preserve what they could while abandoning what they couldn't save. But humanity chose to stand and fight, transforming their entire civilization in the process. "We thought we were bringing doom to your species," Harmony of Equations confided to Dr. Kim during one of their late-night research sessions. "Instead, we may have brought you the stars." As the months passed, the solar system became a fortress, unlike any that had ever existed. Hidden weapons platforms waited in the asteroid belt. Massive defense stations orbited every major planet. The space between worlds bristled with automated defensive systems and patrol fleets. But the most important development was happening on a smaller scale. Human and Kitharan children played together in the lunar colonies, their games a mixture of both cultures. Scientists from both species worked as peers, their collaboration producing insights that neither could have achieved alone. Soldiers from different worlds trained together, learning to trust each other with their lives. "This is what we're really fighting for," Admiral Chen realized as she watched a human child teaching a young Kitharan how to play baseball in the reduced gravity of Luna. Not just survival, but the future we're building together. The final month before the Devourer's arrival was marked by a strange calm. The frantic preparations continued, but there was also a sense of quiet determination that settled over the solar system. Humanity and their Kitharan allies had done everything they could. The weapons were built, the defenses prepared, the strategies tested and retested. Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible a year before. Hundreds of human and Kitharan ships hung in perfect formation around Earth, their hulls gleaming with the merged technologies of two species. In the distance, The massive defensive installations of Luna and Mars stood ready, their weapons charged and waiting. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said to his mixed crew of humans and aliens, "we face it together." The response came from 1,000 voices in 2 languages, all speaking as one, together. Deep space sensors detected the first Devourer scouts entering the outer solar system as Earth entered its final night of peace. The enemy had arrived, confident in their superior numbers and technology, expecting another easy conquest like the hundreds they had achieved before. They were about to discover that humanity and their allies had prepared a very different welcome than any the Devourers had ever encountered. The prey they had pursued across the galaxy was ready to become the predator, and the hunters were about to become the hunted. Humanity's fury, unleashed. The final stand. The battle for Earth's solar system began not with the thunder of weapons, but with silence. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their massive black ships blotting out the stars like a plague of metal locusts. For a moment, the void between worlds held its breath as 2 civilizations faced each other across the infinite darkness. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of Olympus Station, watching as her tactical displays filled with enemy contacts. The numbers were sobering, over 800 Devourer vessels against humanity's combined fleet of 300 ships. But numbers had never told the whole story of human warfare. "All stations report ready," came the voice of Captain Morrison from the flagship Defiance. "Human and Kitharan crews standing by for your orders, Admiral." Chen looked at the mixed crew around her, humans and Kitharans working side by side at consoles that merged the best of both species' technologies. Melody of Distant Stars stood at her right hand, her alien features calm despite the approaching doom that had destroyed her homeworld. "They expect us to run," Chen said quietly. "Every species they've encountered has either fled or been overwhelmed in the first assault. They've never faced an enemy that chose to stand and fight." The first Devourer transmission came exactly as expected. A demand for surrender, broadcast in mathematical sequences that needed no translation. Submit or be destroyed. It was the same ultimatum they had given to countless worlds across the galaxy. Admiral Chen's response was delivered in perfect Devourer language, translated by the quantum communication arrays that had taken months to perfect. "You have pursued refugees to our home. You have threatened our allies. You have brought war to our doorstep. We decline your offer. Come and take what you think is yours." The Devourers' reaction was immediate and predictable. Their fleet began advancing in the same formation they had used for millennia, massive battleships in the center protected by clouds of smaller vessels. They had never needed to adapt their tactics, because no prey had ever survived long enough to force them to innovate. That was about to change. "Execute Prometheus Protocol," Admiral Chen ordered. Across the solar system, hidden installations that had remained dormant suddenly blazed to life. The quantum disruptor array, built according to joint human-Kitharan designs, activated in perfect synchronization. The effect was immediate and devastating to the Devourer fleet. Their quantum communication networks, which had coordinated their forces for thousands of years, simply stopped working. Suddenly, 800 ships that had operated as a single entity became 800 individual vessels, each cut off from the others, each forced to make decisions without the collective intelligence that had made them unstoppable. "Phase 2, Chen commanded. "All fighters launch. Show them what human pilots can do." The space around Earth erupted as thousands of small craft poured from hidden launch bays throughout the system. Human pilots, their reflexes enhanced by Kitharan neural interfaces, flew ships that responded to thought as much as touch. They moved like schools of fish through space, unpredictable and impossibly fast. The Devourers had never faced fighters like these. Their own small craft were efficient, but predictable, following programmed patterns that optimized for their quantum-linked coordination. Against individual human pilots making split-second decisions based on instinct and creativity, they were hopelessly outmatched. Lieutenant Sarah Park, a former video game champion from Seoul, led her squadron through a formation of Devourer fighters with maneuvers that would have been impossible in atmosphere. Her ship, the Wild Card, danced between enemy fire while her weapons carved through alien armor with precision no computer could match. "This is for everyone who couldn't run," she whispered as her lasers found their targets. But the real surprise came when the main battle began in earnest. The Devourers expected the human fleet to meet them head-on. Capital ship against capital ship in the traditional battle line that had decided space combat for millennia. Instead, they found themselves facing tactics that had never been used in space warfare, because no species had ever thought to try them. Human ships moved like wolves, in small packs that struck without warning and vanished before the enemy could respond. Catharan vessels provided support with their advanced shielding technology, protecting human ships as they made impossible attack runs. The combined fleet refused to engage in the kind of slugging match the Devourers expected. Captain Morrison led his task force in a devastating assault on the Devourer left flank. The Defiance, equipped with hybrid human Catharan technology, punched through alien shields with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Human creativity had found ways to combine Catharan power generation with human weapons design, creating armaments that were far more effective than either species could have built alone. "Target their command ships," Morrison ordered. "Everyone we take down makes the rest more confused." The Devourers had never faced an enemy that deliberately targeted their command structure. Their previous victims had either been too weak to threaten their capital ships, or too disorganized to identify them. But human intelligence officers, working with Catharan refugees who understood their enemy's psychology, had identified every command vessel in the approaching fleet. One by one, the Devourer Admiral equivalents found themselves under focused attack from multiple human task forces. Ships that had commanded the destruction of entire star systems were suddenly fighting for their own survival against enemies that appeared from impossible angles and struck with weapons that cut through their armor like tissue paper. The tide of battle turned not in hours, but in minutes. The Devourers, accustomed to crushing their enemies with overwhelming force, found themselves being picked apart by an enemy that refused to fight the way space battles were supposed to be fought. Their rigid tactics, perfected over millennia against fleeing refugees and unprepared colonies, proved utterly inadequate against a prepared enemy fighting for their home. "Admiral," called out Commander Jang from the tactical station, "we're reading massive explosions throughout their fleet. They're starting to retreat to their outer formations." But Admiral Chen had studied everything the Catharans knew about their enemies, and she understood something crucial about Devourer psychology. They're not retreating. They're regrouping for their planet-killer weapons. All ships execute Fury Protocol. The Fury Protocol was humanity's answer to the Devourer's ultimate weapon. Massive energy beams capable of cracking planets and boiling away atmospheres. But the aliens had never faced an enemy that anticipated this escalation and prepared for it. Hidden installations throughout the asteroid belt suddenly revealed themselves, not as defensive positions, but as massive rail guns that had been built into asteroids themselves. Rocks the size of mountains, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, began streaking toward the Devourer fleet with devastating effect. The aliens had shields that could deflect energy weapons and armor that could resist conventional projectiles. They had no defense against kinetic weapons moving at relativistic speeds, because no sane species would turn asteroids into bullets. The destructive potential was too great, the collateral damage too severe. But humanity was fighting for the survival of their species, and they had already decided that any weapon that could save Earth was worth using. The kinetic bombardment shattered the Devourer fleet like a hammer striking glass. Ships that had survived battles across half the galaxy were torn apart by impacts that released more energy than nuclear weapons. The carefully organized formations dissolved into chaos as massive vessels tried desperately to escape the deadly hail of accelerated rocks. Commander Elena Rodriguez, now leading the assault on the Devourer flagship, watched as her target's shields collapsed under the kinetic bombardment. "All units, focus fire on the command ship. End this!" The combined human-Catharan task force descended on the Devourer flagship like avenging angels. The massive vessel, larger than some of Earth's cities, found itself under attack from dozens of smaller ships that struck from every direction simultaneously. Its weapons, designed to destroy planets, couldn't track targets that moved like attacking fighter planes. The flagship's destruction marked the end of Devourer coordination. Without their command ship and cut off from their quantum communication networks, the alien fleet became nothing more than individual ships fleeing in panic. Many tried to escape to hyperspace, but human engineers had prepared one final surprise. Gravity mines, hidden throughout the system and activated remotely, created spatial distortions that made hyperspace jumps impossible. The Devourers found themselves trapped in a system they had entered to conquer, now facing an enemy that showed them no more mercy than they had shown countless other species. The battle lasted 18 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 30 minutes. When the last Devourer ship was either destroyed or captured, Admiral Chen found herself looking at tactical displays that showed complete victory. Not a single alien vessel had escaped to report what had happened in Earth's solar system. "Ma'am," Captain Morrison's voice came over the comm, exhausted but triumphant. "Long-range sensors show additional Devourer fleets moving in our direction. Word of this defeat hasn't reached them yet. They're still coming." Admiral Chen smiled grimly. The Devourers had made a fatal mistake. They had shown humanity what they were capable of, given them time to prepare, and then faced them in the kind of direct confrontation that humans had been perfecting for thousands of years. "Then we'll have to teach each fleet the same lesson," she replied. "But we won't wait for them to come to us. Melody, your people spoke of other refugee fleets out there, other species fleeing from these monsters?" Melody of Distant Stars nodded, her expression showing the first hope her people had felt in generations. "Dozens of species scattered across the galaxy, running and hiding." "Not anymore," Chen declared. "We're going to find every refugee, every survivor, every species that's been forced to flee their home. We're going to give them what we gave you, a chance to stand and fight." The transformation was complete. Humanity had evolved from a single-planet species hiding in their solar system to the galaxy's new guardians. The prey had become the predator, and the age of the Devourers was ending. Captain Morrison captured the moment perfectly in his final log entry. The Devourers came to Earth expecting to find another helpless victim. Instead, they found humanity. They thought they were hunting refugees. They discovered they had walked into the lair of a species that doesn't know how to quit, doesn't understand the meaning of surrender, and gets very, very angry when someone threatens their friends. Today, the galaxy learned that humans don't just fight for themselves. We fight for everyone who can't fight back, and we never, ever give up. The hunt had begun, but now humanity was the hunter, and every Devourer fleet in the galaxy had become the prey.